This is the beginning of Media 3. The time is 12:55 p.m. We're back on the record.
Is law estancia prohibited from giving you manuals, instructions, procedures, or requests to enforce any rules?
Conjecture, speculation. The witness has no idea what the apartment complex is prohibited from giving.
All I know is we're bound by the policies of HPD when we work extra jobs.
So if law estancia were to give you some rules, instructions, or procedures, would you then refuse to enforce those requests, or would you abide by those rules?
We would
May
not
object, incomplete hypothetical. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Again, when we work extra jobs, we're working in the capacity of Houston police officers, so the only policies or rules that we follow are HPD department policies and rules.
Mm-hmm. So the answer is no?
Could you repeat the question, please? I'm sorry.
Could you read back the question, please?
Question: so if law stanza were to give you some rules, instructions, or procedures, would you then refuse to enforce those requests, or would you abide by those rules?
May object, incomplete hypothetical. Go ahead.
I would not enforce any of their rules.
Even if the rules complied with state law?
Well, I'm required to enforce state law, and that's part of HPD policy. So if a rule that they gave was related to criminal, well, I'm going to do that anyway.
Mm-hmm. So, after Officer Harris said those initial words to you, after y'all came across Flores, Cruz, and Vargas, then what happened?
Well, as I stated earlier, we continue to monitor their behavior.
And when you say, when you say continue to monitor the behavior, what did you do physically? Stop the car? Keep driving with the car? What did you do?
I believe we initially stopped the car. We didn't park it. We were rolling, so I believe we initially stopped the car, monitored, and then when they started moving, we followed kind of what I would call a slow roll behind them, just to continue to monitoring. And then as the progression of their behavior continued to create reasonable suspicion, we continued to follow up to the point where Officer Harris observed Mr. Flores pull a gun out.
And what was your miles per hour?
I don't know.
You described it as crawling?
I described
May
it.
object, misstates the evidence.
Initially, we stopped. I would describe as we followed him what I would call a slow roll in a car, and then it went from there.
Okay. So you were slow rolling. Then what? Then what did Mr. Harris do?
At what point? I'm sorry.
After the slow roll, did he jump out when it was slow rolling, or did he wait till you stopped again?
No, we stopped, slow rolled. When they started picking up their pace, we picked up our pace accordingly. I don't know how fast that was.
Okay.
And then at the point at which he saw him pull the weapon out and take on a tactical stance as he was running, I brought the car to a stop and we exited our vehicles.
Yeah. And can you show the jury what Mr. Flores did with this alleged gun?
Like physically?
Yeah.
Okay. After he got the gun, the position that I saw him running in,
And where did he get the gun from?
well, Officer Harris picked that up.
What do you recall what he said?
I believe he crouched down and he pulled it from somewhere from his person. I don't remember exactly
That's
where.
what Harris said.
Yes, sir.
But you don't remember where he pulled it from?
No, sir.
Okay.
No, because I didn't see the gun at that point,
Okay.
okay, when he first pulled it out.
Alrighty.
What I can tell you is from what I saw, as far as my observation, after Officer Harris alerted me that he had the gun,
Yeah.
because keep in mind I had a split attention between Mr. Flores and the other two individuals that were there.
Yeah.
As I was coming back with cover,
Uh-huh.
I saw Mr. Flores running kind of out across at I agree, a 45-degree angle, but turning back like this. That's when I saw him.
Uh-huh.
At that point, Officer Harris had already engaged with him.
Yeah. Now, Officer Harris said that. Now, Officer Harris said that he was behind, in between an open car door, or behind an open car door and the car. Correct.
Correct.
And where was? So he was on the right side of the car.
That's correct.
And so, and at the time of the, at the time that you claim that Helder Flores showed a gun, where was Helder Flores in relation to that, to the vehicle? If you were looking straight ahead, was Helder Flores to the right, directly ahead, or to the left?
At which point precisely?
When Helder Flores displayed his gun and you said that he turned around and pointed it somehow or something like that, whatever you demonstrated, at that point was Helder Flores to the right, directly straight ahead of the car, or to the left?
I would say he was just right of center of the car.
Uh-huh. Right. And had you noticed Mr. Harris limping that day?
No, sir.
Did you notice any physical disabilities he had on that day?
No, sir.
How about after, and, okay. Did he express that he was in any pain that day?
I don't recall him expressing that he was in any pain.
Do you know if he took painkillers?
To my knowledge, he did not.
So he was a little bit right of this, right in front of the vehicle.
I would just say right of center. More on the right than center.
Now, did Officer Harris fire the shots right away after he saw this alleged gun, or allegedly saw the gun, or did Flores keep on traveling for a ways?
That's hard for me to say. I wasn't looking at him or Mr. Flores at that point. You know, again, rapidly evolving situation in a matter of seconds, and I had a split attention because of the number of people and the way that they split up there.
Yeah. So you couldn't tell me where Helder Flores was in relation to the vehicle at the time that Harris fired his shots.
Well, that's. I thought I answered that. I apologize. What I remember when he alerted me, and I was watching the other two, when I lasered back, Mr. Flores was right of center of the front of the vehicle, with this kind of position, pointing the gun at Officer Harris.
Right. And Harris testified that he was running like at a 45-degree angle off to the left. Was that correct or not correct?
What he testified to?
Yeah.
That's what I don't remember exactly what he said, but I would concur for the most part. I don't know how exact we can be at 45-degree angle, but
Around a 45-degree angle. So, but at the time the bullets came out of Harris's gun, you couldn't say exactly where Flores was.
what I remember is when he alerted me and I lasered back, I could see Mr. Flores pointing the gun at Officer Harris in that manner. Officer Harris had engaged.
You mean engaged, he shot?
Yes.
Okay. So, basically he was off to the right a little bit to the front when he shot.
Yes, more right of center of the vehicle.
And how many shots do you recall that he shot?
I remember hearing 3.
3. And you did not shoot,
No, sir.
although you saw the gun pointing backwards from Mr. Flores towards y'all.
The reason I
You-
didn't, the reason I didn't shoot,
Well, that's going to be non-responsive because I don't want to know the reason.
I understand.
I just want to know if you did or not.
I did not.
Okay. And after, and he shot about 3 times, you say?
That's what I remember, yes, sir.
And you did find out eventually that he did shoot 3 times?
Yes, sir.
Because there was 3 jackets, or bullet
Casings.
casings.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you know what kind of, let's strike that. So after those shots were fired, then what happened?
Mr. Flores continued running, and he ended up running behind the same vehicle where Mr. Vargas was at.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went to go see where he went.
Mhm.
As we came around that vehicle, we could see Mr. Flores and Mr. Vargas. Mr. Flores was closer to the fence,
Yeah,
and Mr. Vargas was kind of crouched up by the vehicle.
yeah.
And then as we were rounding the corner initially, we saw the gun on the ground,
Mhm.
and then we saw those two further off to the east of the
Mhm.
gun.
Yeah. And earlier, there was some talk before the shooting of somebody crouching by a car. Who was crouching by a car?
Okay, I'm sorry, you have to clarify. At what point are you
Well,
talking about?
before the shooting, there was some testimony by Mr. Harris that somebody was crouching by a car prior to all the shooting taking place.
Okay, what I recall about that is that Mr. Flores, as all 3 of them were running, Mr. Flores crouched down, at which time he pulled his weapon out.
So there was nobody crouching by a car?
Mr. Flores was crouching. They were all running. He stopped for a minute, crouched, I guess grabbed his pistol, and then they continued. So it was Mr. Flores, I believe, is what you're referring to, that Officer Harris referred to.
So he crouched, and that's when he turned around, or when he was crouching?
No,
He turned around and pointed when he was running?
after he crouched.
So how long after he crouched did he point the gun?
All this went down within seconds.
Okay. And what did he crouch down by? Was there a car there?
There was a car there, yes, sir.
Okay. You don't recall? You're shaking your head.
No, it was a car. I thought you just clarified that. You said there was some talk about somebody crouching down by a car, so I thought that was
So when he
deferred.
crouched down by the car, where was the car? To the right of the vehicle or to the left of the vehicle?
To the left of our vehicle? Is
Yeah.
that what you're asking? Yes, sir. To the left of our vehicle.
Okay. So he crouched down to the left of the vehicle, and then after he crouched down to the left of the vehicle, then that's when after that point, at some time, he pointed the gun at both of you, or Mr. Harris.
They were all on the left side of our vehicle
Okay.
initially, okay, ahead of us. He crouched down, he grabbed his handgun, and then as they continued to go through the gate, Mr. Flores broke off from the other 2 and ran what I would call a wide right.
Okay, so he went to the right.
Yes, sir.
Oh, I thought you testified earlier they were running towards the left. Mr. Flores was running towards the left.
Well, I testified that he broke off from the other 2.
Uh-huh.
He ran a wide right, and then at a 45-degree angle, I concurred with Officer Harris's that that's the direction that he ended up running.
Okay. Now, after the shooting, did you drive the car some more, or did you leave it right where it was?
No, the car remained exactly where it was.
This is the better one,
Right, this is their.
yeah, this is the better one. I'm going to show you a photograph that's marked as exhibit number 4. And do you recognize that document?
The document or the
All right.
picture? I'm sorry.
Photograph.
Yes, I do.
What is it?
This is the area of the complex where the incident occurred. That's my car right there that's got the doors open.
Okay. In the middle.
Yes, sir.
And so I see both doors are open. So when the shooting occurred, that is the position of your car, including how the doors are.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. And those 3 yellow evidence tags to the left in the photograph are where the shell casings ended up?
Yes, where these markers are right here?
Yes.
Yes, sir, that's
Now
mine.
I see 2 of them stand out, but the other, where's the third
Yeah,
one?
I don't know. I was about to ask you the same
Is that
question.
that little yellow thing that's really close to the door?
Could be.
Or, I can't even tell if it's yellow, it's so small. Or is it way to the left, that whitish thing?
No, that whitish thing way to the left, I think, is a parking line.
Oh, it's a parking lot, okay. So it could be that little yellow thing
Yes,
close to the
sir.
door. All right. And now, are your windows tinted?
Yes, sir, they are.
On this, the passenger window is tinted, the driver's window is tinted, and the rest of the side windows are tinted except for the
Windshield.
windshield.
Yes,
right.
sir.
Okay. And when you engage a person with your weapon, aren't you trained to seek cover?
If we can.
Okay.
If
now,
possible.
there's a door there, so that helps with some cover, doesn't it?
Yes, based on our original training out of the academy, if you were to do a felony stop, you would use the door and the frame of the car as some form of cover. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And so now, if you want to maintain cover, you would like to cover as much of your body as possible, correct?
Yes, if you can.
If you can. So in this instance, the best procedure would be to crouch down, because the door is not that tall, so you'd want to crouch down a little bit, correct?
It's going to depend on the circumstance. It's going to depend on how fast there's an imminent threat that we're being faced with.
Okay. Now,
So you might not have time to crouch down.
I got you. Now, you were concentrating on Vargas and Cruz during the time of the shooting, and also you kind of looked at Flores for a while, correct?
Yes, after the alert, I brought my attention back to Flores.
Right. Were you at the time of the shooting? Were you watching Flores?
Well, I was bringing my attention back to him.
Okay. So at the very time the shots were fired, were your eyes on Vargas and Cruz or Flores?
At the time the shots were fired, I would say my attention was more on Flores.
Okay. But you
as I was bringing it back.
and you were looking pretty much either straight ahead or maybe off to the little bit to the right or the left.
Well, if I could demonstrate, I mean, I had the door open. I got out, I drew down, facing more towards this direction over here.
More towards the left, okay.
Yes, sir, because Mr. Vargas and the other individual ran over here.
When you say ran over here, could you mark that? Well, no, don't mark it yet.
Okay.
But okay, so they ran over there, and so at the very time of the shooting, your eyes were on who?
Well, they were in transition. I was adjusting my attention from Mr. Vargas
From the left
from the left back over
to the right, somewhere in there.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and then and your eyes were when the actual shots were fired, which only took what, 1 second, 2 seconds?
It was, I don't know exactly, but it was quick.
That was quick.
Yes, sir.
So your eyes were focused on either Vargas, Cruz, or Flores, right?
Okay. I guess I'm not doing a good.
Well, I'm not
job
asking. I'm not asking which ones, but it was one of those 3, or maybe a couple of them at a time.
I would say that it went. I believe that Mr. Cruz jumped down on the sidewalk and ran
Yeah.
already at this point. I remember Mr. Vargas, who I didn't know it was Mr. Vargas, but one of the individuals was over there crouching down behind that truck.
Yeah.
That's who I was watching.
Okay.
After I was alerted and we were out, getting out, as I scanned back, Officer Harris was already engaging. He had already
Shooting.
discharged, yes, or discharged. But when I brought my attention back, Mr. Flores was right of center of the vehicle, running at that angle that we talked about earlier.
So your eyes weren't focused on. Your eyes weren't looking at Mr. Harris at the time of the shooting. It was on the suspects, correct?
It was on Mr. Flores. When the shooting started,
Yeah.
I brought my attention back to Mr. Flores.
Yeah.
Okay, and at that point, it stayed on him.
Okay. Stayed on him, right?
Yes, sir.
Until the shooting was over.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you can't tell me then, since you weren't looking at Mr. Harris, you couldn't tell me whether he was standing up or crouching down, could you?
Not 100%, no. I remember him taking a stance, a standard stance.
Yeah. But at the very time of the shooting, once again, you were
Correct.
looking.
I was looking at Mr. Flores.
Yes. Okay. On this exhibit number 3, is it, or 4?
4.
In exhibit number 4, could you put a little H for where Helder Flores first crouched down, the first time you saw him crouch down? Huh? Yeah, H1, H with a little one maybe, or H1, wherever the first time he was crouching down.
Well, I couldn't be exact on that. I mean, our car was further back.
I see. So was it closer to that gate, or was it behind the gate?
Well, at that point in time, when Officer Harris saw him crouch down, I think my attention was more on Mr. Vargas and Mr. Cruz. So I couldn't be exact on where exactly he crouched down at.
Okay. Alrighty. Now, you say that he crouched down the second time?
No,
Or
I didn't
just
say
one?
that.
Okay. When Mr. So, could you put an H by where Helder Flores was, where his feet were, at the time that the shots were fired by Mr. Harris? Approximately. I mean, you don't have to be exact.
That's my best guess. Let me take a look at this. Maybe right there,
Okay, that's about where his feet were.
approximately.
Okay, approximately. I got you. You don't have to be exact.
Okay.
Okay, that's it for that one. Could you show it up to the camera once more? Yeah. Right about there. Yeah. Here's what we did. Okay. Now, in your statements and in Mr. Harris, oh, did you ever read Mr. Harris's statements?
I'm sure I have.
Yeah, because it's a part of the IAD report, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, and you got, now Mr. Harris testified that you and him discussed the situation when you were basically, I guess, at work after the incident, correct?
This incident you're talking
Yes.
about? Well, the days immediately following it, you're automatically given 3 days off,
Yeah.
just due to the nature of the event.
Sure.
I remember spending a lot of time at his house. I went
Yeah.
to go check on him and make sure he's okay.
Yes, and you spend several hours at his house after the events, right? And prior to making your ID statement, correct?
Prior to the IED statement. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, because
Yeah. And prior to your statement to homicide, correct?
well, no. The statement to homicide, that was made, we went directly from the scene. Once we were done with the scene
Yeah.
formalities and investigation, we went straight to homicide and gave her a statement at that point.
When you say you went straight to homicide, would you go downtown somewhere or where?
Well, they're located at police headquarters, so
Okay.
downtown, yeah.
All right, 1200 Travis?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and so you drove down there.
Yes, sir.
So how many hours was it after the incident did you sign your homicide statement?
I'm not sure exactly. Approximately. I really don't remember exactly.
Yeah.
I would say approximately 6 hours,
Okay.
if not more.
And do you recall that's about the same time Mr. Harris signed his?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Approximately.
And did you drove down together?
No, so when the incident was over, and he called out, and the units arrived, I don't remember who was on that scene, sergeant or lieutenant, made sure we were separated. They put me in one patrol car, and they put Officer Harris in another.
How long did it take for the first officer arrived in what, 5 minutes, 10 minutes?
It seemed like it was within minutes.
Yeah.
Pretty quick.
Okay, and how long did it take for you to call the HPO union to get a lawyer?
I don't recall exactly.
No, I've heard of officers almost calling like within a couple of minutes of a shooting. Did you call within a couple of minutes?
I didn't, but sometimes what will happen is, I'm not saying it happened on this time, but sometimes the officers that are responding will place the call to the intake or the answering service or whatever, just to give them the heads up.
Yeah.
To notify the on-call staff attorney that's going to respond.
Right, and you had the opportunity to speak to an HPO union prior to signing your statement at homicide, didn't you?
Yes.
And so did Harris, to your knowledge?
Yes, sir.
And was it the same lawyer,
It was.
Aaron Suter?
That's correct.
So Aaron Suter advised both you and Mr. Harris prior to signing your homicide statements concerning the events. I don't want to know what he said, but it was concerning the events.
That's correct.
Now, in the statements, I never saw anything about Helder Flores pointing at the gun at anybody but Mr. Harris. Do you have any knowledge that he pointed the gun at anybody but Mr. Harris?
Well, I would say it was directly pointed at Officer Harris, but at the direction he was running, I was in his line of fire.
Anybody else?
Not that I'm aware of.
So you have no knowledge that Helder Flores ever pointed the gun at anybody, but for sure, you're in your mind, Mr. Harris, and maybe at you.
Yes, sir.
And you didn't testify that he pointed it at Vargas.
That's correct.
You didn't, and he didn't point it at Vargas, did he?
No, sir.
And he didn't point it at Cruz, did he?
No, sir.
And he never pointed at himself, did he?
No, sir.
And you can't identify a single person he pointed the gun at, can you? Other than yourself and Mr. Harris.
That's correct.
Possible. Now, when your union lawyer Suter was talking to you and Harris, where were you? With the union office or where?
Initially, it was on the scene
Yeah.
in the separate vehicles that we were at.
Yeah. And then later on?
Well, he came down to homicide with us.
Okay. So you were all three there at homicide
Yes.
together?
Well, we were all there individually, but
Uh-huh.
we were all at homicide at the same time.
So Suter was there when the statements were signed?
Yes.
And did... Now, did you ever yourself, not with somebody else, personally check with the NCIC, the TCIC, or any other database into the criminal history of Helder Flores?
At the time of this incident?
Yes, you personally.
No, sir.
How about after the incident, you personally?
I don't recall doing that.
So you have
it's
no...
possible I could have, but I don't recall doing it.
So you have no personal independent knowledge of Helder Flores ever being convicted of any crime, correct?
No, I wouldn't be able to answer that right now, no.
Yeah. And you don't have any personal, of anything you did, you don't have no knowledge that Mr. Vargas had ever been convicted of a crime.
I mean, I have knowledge, but
No, I mean,
you're asking
you're-
if I ran him on an NCIC, TCIC. I don't remember running him, but I do
On any
remember being
database.
advised of his criminal background.
Well, it's somebody else, but your own activities.
My own research?
Yeah.
Not based on running him personally on NCIC or TCIC.
Or the other databases you have access to, because you have a few other databases, right?
Correct.
Those are the major ones, TCIC, NCIC?
Yes, sir, those are the major ones.
How about Cruz? Did you ever run any database searches on him to see?
No, sir.
So based upon your own personal knowledge and your personal research, you have no idea to this day whether Flores, Cruz, or Vargas have ever been convicted of any crime in their life.
Well, I have knowledge, but I didn't.
Well, I mean, do your own research, not somebody telling you what happened.
Right. I don't recall running any one of those individuals,
Right.
you know, on a criminal background myself.
Yeah. Okay. Have you ever arrested a police officer?
I don't think so.
Have you ever been on the scene of any crime where a police officer of any kind, whether it be federal, county, any city, was a suspect in a crime?
I don't recall any investigations where I was a primary investigator, and officer.
How about not the primary investigator, but an officer on the scene?
I don't remember. There's nothing. I would think I would remember something like that. I'm not. Nothing's coming to mind when you ask me that question.
You've been an officer now for 22 full years, correct?
Correct.
Have you ever witnessed excessive force used on a suspect, in your opinion?
No, sir.
Have you ever, besides Helder Flores, have you ever observed any officer shoot anybody before?
No, sir. I have not. Actually, I can clarify. I did think of an incident involving
Yeah.
an officer.
Okay.
Would you like me to talk about that?
Yes.
Okay, so I was dispatched to a call involving a disturbance where the person who called it in stated that the disturbance was coming from the quote-unquote courtesy officer's apartment.
Yeah.
Courtesy is a common terminology.
I know it is.
Okay. Just wanted to explain it, sorry. Anyway, upon making contact at the door, it involved a police officer, and so I notified my sergeant, and my sergeant made the scene and handled it from there, and I believe we did a report on the issue.
Wasn't that pretty recent?
No, that was a long time ago.
Okay. Did that officer, was there an IAD complaint about him ever lodged?
I don't know what the outcome was. The
What do you-
sergeant...
about what year was that?
I would say like in the late 90s.
And what was the name of the officer?
I don't recall that.
Was it an HPD officer or another kind of officer?
I believe it was an HPD officer.
What was the name of your sergeant that was there with you?
I believe that was Sergeant Acedo.
How do you spell that?
Acedo.
And where was that located? What part of Houston?
Southwest Houston, like Gessner and West Park area.
And so did you find out that the officer discharged his weapon in his apartment?
No, he did not do that.
What exactly did he do?
The only knowledge that I had on it was that he was engaged in a verbal argument with the other occupant, who I never saw in there because the sergeant came and took over the scene.
I see. And was there any other officers at the scene?
Yes.
HPD officers?
Yes, sir.
About how many?
Let's see, Officer Yoakum,
Yep. And Yoakum is spelled Yoakum?
I believe so.
Okay.
Officer Leffler,
Leffler is L-E.
Lefler,
Okay.
and Officer Delia,
I spell that.
Delia.
And do you know who it was the officer was, the HPD officer was arguing with?
I don't.
Do you know?
It was a female companion of some kind, but I don't know the nature of the relationship or who she was.
Was the female companion injured?
No, sir.
Who was it who called the police?
It was a neighbor, a tenant that lived, I guess, on top of or next to the apartment in question.
Okay. And what was the name of the complex?
I don't recall that, I'm sorry.
Was it an apartment complex?
It was.
Okay. Do you recall what street it was on?
I want to say it was on South Gessner.
South Gessner?
Yes, sir.
And did that ever result in an IED complaint?
Not to my knowledge, but I'm not aware.
You weren't required to give an IED statement in
No,
that
I did not have to give an ID statement.
Okay, so you witnessed the use of force by other officers, correct?
Yes, sir.
Including tasing?
Yes, sir.
How about baton usage?
Yes, I've witnessed that.
But never a firearm?
No, this is the first time I was part of an incident where there was a discharge of a firearm.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry. There was an incident where an officer shot a dog,
Yes,
and I wasn't right there to see it, but I was on the scene.
I see. And that officer shot a dog at someone's house, or what happened there?
It was at a residence. The dog was unsecured and was aggressive, and I think attacked the officer.
According to the officer's statements?
Yes, I didn't actually see the shooting.
Yeah, and you didn't see any injuries on the officer, did you?
No, sir.
Okay. Did IED require you to make a statement in that case?
I don't recall on that one. I don't remember giving an IED statement on that one.
Do you remember what year that was?
Late 90s.
Do you remember the name of the officer?
Slot.
How do you spell that?
I guess SLOT.
S-L-O-T, Slot?
Yes, sir.
And do you know Mr. Officer Slot to this day?
No.
Okay, but it was S-L-O-T,
Yes.
and he was accused of shooting a dog in the late 90s.
Well, we were on a scene, and that's what happened. Yeah. he
Okay, so
shot the
Slot
dog, yeah.
Slot shot a dog in the late 90s. What part of town was that in?
Also Southwest.
Southwest. You remember the street?
I think it was off South Gessner also.
You believe it was on South Gessner. Okay. But you don't know if the owners complained to IED. You don't know.
I don't. No, sir. I don't believe so.
Okay. Usually, when there's a shooting, it's required there be an IED report, right?
Well,
As long as it hit the gun
define
hit.
shoot. Yeah, you mean like
When you
in
hit
this case?
something, hit a person or hit an animal, there's going to be an IED.
I don't know what
investigation.
I don't know what the policy was at that point on
Yeah.
that type of incident
Yeah.
involving a dog.
Uh-huh.
It may have, and he may have had to answer up.
Yeah.
But
Nowadays, it's every single discharge, isn't it?
I think so, yes, sir.
Okay, whether you hit something or
Not. Yeah, no, you're right. If you discharge your firearm, yeah. If you discharge your firearm, it's got to be, it's got to be brought up.
Yeah.
A supervisor's got to be notified.
Yeah.
And then once that happens, it goes from there as far as, but as far as I understand, in this day and time, yeah, I believe ID is going to get involved if you discharge your firearm.
Do you know who Slott's supervisor was at that
sir,
time?
I don't.
Describe the noise level, if you could, not considering the gunshots, at the Flores scene at the time of the shooting. Was there noise around, or you had mentioned it's by a street, right? Or is it by a street?
No, I mean, Gulfton was right here.
So Gulfton. So Gulfton is the street that's driving by.
Yes, sir.
Okay, is that noisy?
I would classify, I mean, there was no loud noise that I remember.
Okay.
It was just common everyday traffic.
Common everyday traffic. So there wasn't any noise that you remember, like overly loud cars or
No.
trains or planes?
No, sir.
Okay. Did you search Flores' cars afterwards?
His car?
Yeah.
No, sir.
Or did he come in the car? Do you know?
I never saw him in or around, like, entering or exiting a vehicle.
Yeah. Do you know if Harris had been working that day? His regular HPD job?
I don't remember.
Had you had any coffee or energy drinks that day?
Had I?
Yeah.
It's possible. I probably had a Red Bull in the morning.
You regularly drink the energy drink Red Bull?
If I have an energy drink, I'll drink Red Bull.
You drink coffee also?
At times, yes, sir.
But you don't recall what you did that day?
I don't remember. No, sir.
And at the time of the shooting, were you on any prescription medications?
Not that I recall.
Or any time around within a year before or a year after, have you been on any prescription medications?
Well, I take blood pressure medicine, yeah.
And what is the name of that blood pressure medicine?
Amlodipine.
What is it?
Amlodipine.
Can you spell that? No?
I can give you a shot.
Okay, what is it?
AMLO. Padine. P-I-D-I-N-E. Presume.
And so besides that particular pharmaceutical, do you suspect during the time of the shooting you might have been on any other pharmaceutical of any kind?
No. I don't even know if I was taking that at that time.
Yeah.
So,
You don't take any pharmaceuticals for stress,
what do you mean? I'm sorry.
anxiety?
No, not at all.
Yeah. How about any over-the-counters medications?
No, I do a lot of juicing. I do a lot of stuff at Whole Foods, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. Do you take any steroids of any kinds?
no, sir.
Prior to the Helder Flores incident, what was the last time you had been to see a doctor or to a hospital?
Okay, I'm not sure the exact time. I mean, typically I have a physical every year, and it's usually around July or August. So, you know, around the time of this incident, I don't know if I had just had one or one shortly thereafter, but prior to the incident, it would have been approximately 1 year before that.
And what was the result of your physical?
I mean, I don't remember the exact results, but I'm usually in pretty good health.
Okay. Now, at the academy when you were getting trained, did you have to fire a service weapon?
During training?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
How many times did you have to fire it?
Well, it was, I don't know how long the duration of that part of the training was, but I would say several hundred rounds.
Several hundred rounds.
Yes, sir.
And was that all at a range?
Yes, it was all at one of a couple different ranges, yes.
Okay. And did they have during that training? They didn't put you behind the wheel of a car where you had to jump out and start shooting, did they?
Not during the academy. I don't remember jumping out of a car, but we did do tactical training, like in simulated environments, if you will.
Okay, in simulated environments, is that those shoot don't shoot scenarios where people pop up and you got to make a split-second decision?
Yeah, we had some of those, yes. Yeah. And then we had other environments where they would set up the range to shoot under different climates. For example, dark, shooting with darkness, shooting with daylight, shooting moving behind obstacles, things of that nature.
And when did you get that training?
Well, there was some of that training in the academy, and then I've gotten further training through the HPD Tactical School.
I see. Now, have any of those involved shooting behind the doors of cars?
Well, the initial training that we received coming out, that was this format that you're looking at on this picture. That would have been the common format if you're going to be involved in shooting from a car. Would be to use what you can of that car between the body of the frame and the door.
Right, and the motor block.
I'm sorry?
The motor block.
Yeah, absolutely. If you can get to it, right?
You can't shoot through a motor block.
Right. So if you can get to it, I mean, it's going to depend on your situation. But yes, I mean, some of it is just adapting to whatever the circumstances are.
Now, when they teach you about getting behind cover, do they also teach you about better cover versus not so good cover?
Well, yes, and that's what I'm saying. If the time afforded, if you're afforded the time and you can try to get to cover, then great.
Yeah.
But if the circumstances don't permit that, then you utilize what you have.
Yeah. But
which sometimes they also train that sometimes cover can be your body armor.
Yeah. Were you all wearing body armor that day?
Yes, we were.
Okay. So both you and Harris wear body armor.
Yes, sir.
Are you required to wear body armor nowadays?
We are.
Whenever you're on duty or on an extra job?
Anytime.
Okay. And that's the way it was on the day of the shooting of Helder Flores.
Yeah, and even if they didn't require it, I always wear my body armor.
Okay.
I want to go home.
Now, do they ever teach at the academy or elsewhere that it is better to get the engine block between you and the shooting suspect, because of course bullets don't go through engine blocks?
I mean, they didn't necessarily differentiate better versus worse. They just talked about these topics. So yes, it was discussed, like if you have that choice on a vehicle, you'd rather get behind the engine block if you can.
Yeah.
If the circumstances don't allow you to do that, then you got to use what you got.
So that's taught that the engine block is a good cover.
Yes.
Yeah, and it should be obvious to the average person that engine block is much better than a door, right?
I would agree with that. Yes, sir.
Okay. Pass witness.
we need a break?
If I could just take a quick restroom break. Okay, sorry. I'll make it quick.
This is the end of Media 3. The time is 1:45 p.m. We're off the record.